Hello everyone, this is Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm continuing my series of reviewing my favorite films of all time. So if you haven't done it already, please check out my 3 reviews of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, my collective #1 film of all time. And yes, I know they're a bit long, but so are Lord of the Rings. So they are fantastic films, so check out, if you haven't seen them, check them out. And also check out my reviews. But now I'm going to talk about my #2 favorite film of all time. And up until recently, when this film came out, The Road Warrior was my favorite action film of all time. And then Mad Max Fury Road came out. And how I feel about this film is that if George Miller had the resources he needed to in the early 80s making The Road Warrior, this is what he would have made. And now that he has the technology and the funds and everything, this is feels like a filmmaker's lifelong project to bring to fruition his ideal perfect project. And this movie, in my opinion, is one of the closest things you could get to perfect for an action film, dystopian film, and such an amazing visual experience using film. And going to start off with Mad Doctor George Miller, who got robbed. Sorry. This film and him as a director, I really, really wish that he won Best Director back for 2015. And Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu and The Revenant were fantastic, but I really thought George Miller earned this with such an amazing. And I know a lot of people are going to argue this movie has no story. I'll get to more about that in a minute, but how this story was conveyed in such an over the top, operatic, classical yet heavy metal style with a minimalist plot but such deep mythology and done in such an impeccable visual way is just breathtaking. This movie is breathtaking from start to finish. And what George Miller does is make a film that has unbelievable kinetic energy that I was physically drained leaving the theater after watching this, because how intense this film is and how affecting this film is, and the way this story is conveyed in such a sharp, barreling manner, and the pacing of this is non-stop, heavy, tense, suspenseful action, just full-blown freight train war rig coming at you for almost 2 hours. And it's pretty unbelievable that he's able to convey this and bring this to such a way. And from a tonal perspective, this has such an amazingly singular tone, and this film fits that style, that substance, that tone, exactly what George Miller wants from start to finish. You are locked in this crazy world from the second that you hear that voiceover, "My name is Max," all the way up to the very end as that camera holds on him to cut the black. And this film is just awe-inspiring, and I'm gonna talk this the hell up throughout this review, but this is such an amazing work of art, and in such an over the top violent but yet so artfully created piece of film. And it affects you in such a draining, intense way because the suspense of this film is so impactful, and you feel for everyone having to deal with this life-threatening situation that everyone is in this film, and really seeing those subtle connections with the characters, because like this movie's easy to talk about the action, talking about the visuals, but getting all these characters without George Miller and his fellow 2 writers for this film beating you over the head with things, because they know they don't have to. And what this film says in so many different ways, from like the little details of what the actors do, and I'll talk about that a little more in depth, but overall, George Miller might have made the most singularly perfectly constructed tonal film ever. This is just such an experience from start to finish that feels like this is such an amazingly brought to life world. And John Seale's camera work and cinematography and the editing in this, they do such great subtle things in terms of the editing to doing things that they did by necessity that felt like it needed to be done in the 80s because that was the technology they had, and then bringing that into this film and giving a vintage tinge to everything in this hyper bright and ultraviolet looking film. The colors in this film are ridiculous, and the just the tint that they give this whole entire film is breathtaking and amazing and just awe-inspiring. My jaw drops just watching this film and how intense and stylistic everything is. And now getting to the writing, the story. It really upsets me when people just throw away, like, oh, this movie has no plot. It has a plot and important themes of survival. And I work at a college, and I have my office. I have movie posters in my office, and all of them have a particular meaning and a reason why they're there, because they convey an important theme that can connect with human beings. And I have my Fury Road poster up in my office because the theme of this film, whether you live to survive for the sake of surviving, and maybe you can just keep crawling across and just scratching by and not fully living and just surviving for the sake of surviving and just running away, or taking on the biggest challenges you could possibly get head on and really sacrificing the ease of just scraping by to really be challenged and to overcome and truly live and thrive. And that's something I try to instill in the students that I work with, is that don't do the bare minimum, just don't scrape by. Take challenges, take opportunities head on. And that's the biggest turning point of this whole entire film, where it's like, oh, they just turn around and go back to the place they started. They come to a realization, a momentum shift, where they realize that the way you really survive is to take on challenges head on. And in this film, the most blunt metaphor ever, a giant war party heading straight at them with their only chance of truly living and thriving on the other side. And this film of survival and getting past the ghost of your past that both Max and Furiosa and all these young women have to deal with. And also the commentaries on dictatorships and tyrannical governments and dogma that tells you this Immortan Joe tells these people don't be addicted to water milk because he doesn't want to give them the water to survive, so tricking them into thinking and brainwashing them that they don't need it. And just looking at, like, this is such a well realized metaphorical fascist regime that's in this film and fighting back against this tyrannical rule. And a lot of the feminist undertones of this film, that these women breaking free and standing up for themselves. This is a truly deep film. It might not have the most complex plot. This isn't some kind of spy crime mystery thriller. But having a story that's impactful like this, and with characters that all stand out on their own. Each of the 5 young women, the brides, have their quirks and are very distinct characters. Furiosa and Max are 2 road warriors. They are warriors of this wasteland that might not be the most talkative of people, but their physicality and the way they deal with everything in this film tells you all about them. And to move along to the acting to connect with this, Tom Hardy is fantastic in this film. And anybody who argues that this is a Furiosa film, they shouldn't have called this Mad Max, really, Did you watch the other Mad Max films? And did you even watch this film? He is still the main focus of this film for the most part. And he is a tertiary character, so he was in the Road Warrior. This is basically a modern up upgrade of what the Road Warrior was. He's there to help save this group of people, and he's all around the outside. He doesn't need to talk. He had like 15 lines total in the whole entire Road Warrior, and in this film, it's the physicality and how Tom Hardy is one of the best physical actors out there. And it's like, oh, he just mumbled all those words and blah, 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 blah. He just does what Tom Hardy does. He grunts and stuff. It's like, yeah, if you were wandering around a wasteland for 7 years not talking to anybody, you're going to sound perfectly fine when you're trying to communicate. But what he's able to bring is such a feral nature to this character. And what I love about this film is you actually get to see the Mad Max side of him where he has lost it. And he's trying to find his sanity in this crazy, messed up wasteland. Charlize Theron really stands out as this intense and understated performance who, when she has to do physical work, the scene where her and Tom Hardy fight is so intense and really elevated by their performances and what they do physically. And Nicholas Hoult has a nice arc in this film as the young war boy Nux, and he really stands out. And Hugh Keys-Byrne from the original Mad Max, who is Immortan Joe in this film, brings such a gravitas to this idol. And the short sequences where you get to see what he's really like, and he's pitiful and disgusting, and this charade that he puts on, this facade of this epic godlike character, and knowing that all the power that Keys-Byrne brings to this role really puts that on. And all the 5 young women who play the brides, including Riley Keough and Zoe Kravitz and the other ones, they all do a fantastic job, and so much of their acting is physical in this film, and they all really excel at that. In terms of, and to get to the music of this film, Junkie XL is one of my favorite composers now, and it's 100% because of this movie and the Wonder Woman theme. But this soundtrack is unbelievable, and I was dumbfounded that this didn't even get nominated for Best Score. And I can understand, because this is very non-traditional score and probably not something that the Academy would actually pay attention to, but the melding of the heavy metal riffing guitars and the orchestral music, the strings and the percussions and everything brings such an animalistic feel to all this music. And then this pomp and circumstances, so much of it is this operatic feel of this epic adventure that you're going on. And I listen to the soundtrack all the time. My alarm to wake me up is Brothers in Arms from this film. And the music is intense and amazing. And now to what got this so many Oscars: the production design of everything, the sound mix is incredible. The world that they create in this film is so real and so tangible and intense and beautiful. This film is so beautiful. And the makeup and the costumes, this is one of the most amazingly realized fantasy, sci-fi, post-apocalyptic worlds ever brought to film. And I talked that up a lot with talking about Lord of the Rings, but those are things I treasure in a movie, is being lost in this unbelievable world. And Lord of the Rings made Middle-earth, and now we get the wasteland of Mad Max Fury Road. And to sum this all up, this is such an amazing, impactful, unique, just high energy, smashing into a wall car crash of an experience that I wish that if you haven't seen it and didn't get to see it in theaters, I feel bad because you didn't get to see this and it's in real medium. How this should have been seen is on that big screen, but even just watching it now is so amazing, so impactful, and I can't wait for more Mad Max films. Hopefully they make more of them, and I'm going to give Mad Max Fury Road an A+.